Hello everyone, good to see some old friends in the audience. It's my pleasure to be facilitating this conversation today. We're going to have a guided conversation with our panellists here for about the next 20 to 25 minutes, and then we'll be opening up the questions to the floor. So please feel free to get yourself involved. One of my favourite expressions to my university students is that learning is a contact sport. You have to get yourself involved, and the way you get yourself involved, ask some questions. Bridie, let me start with an opening question. What is it that we're trying to achieve with this whole push towards improved gender, and this is the next key word, equity, equality? What's the difference between these terms, equity and equality?
Well, you asked first, what are we trying to achieve? We like to pride ourselves in Australia of giving people a fair go, doing things fairly. We like to think that sport is fair. It's not though, because some people are born with better DNA than others, and others are born with different opportunities and from different backgrounds. So we acknowledge that people come to sport and want to bring their best selves, but that we need to extend equity to those who haven't had the same opportunities. So the best example of defining equity and equality is that difference of seeing 3 children looking at a sporting competition trying to see over a fence. The shortest child needs a bigger step than everybody else to see over that fence. People who are from a remote Indigenous community need more support to get into town to play netball and football. Those with a disability need different opportunities to ensure they're included. So we extend different things to different groups to ensure that everyone gets a fair go. And what we've seen broadly in Australia is that sport and recreation and the business of sport has been owned and operated by old white men.
I think the phrase is pale, male and stale. So what's the better outcome, equity or equality?
Well, equity is not an outcome. Equity is an action. We want to see fairness. We want to level the playing field. We want to know that if our daughter shows up to a football club, netball club, hockey club, that she'll be offered the same opportunities, have the same private places to change, have the same ability to put her hand up to being the president of that club or to coach that club, or that if she's vilified as an umpire or a referee, that the same processes and policies will be put into place to ensure that she remains involved and contributing to sport and recreation the way that boys and men do. And at the moment, that's not happening. So globally, there are targets around gender equality, and most of them align with around 2030, so in about 11 more years. And we have our own targets there, but we know that there are lots of challenges in a multicultural society. And these are expressions that we've heard talked about in the US with the Black Lives Matter campaign, but that broadly, when one group of people, a pale, male and stale group of people, have held on to the business and power of sport, that any loss of power for them actually feels like discrimination. So board quotas, I know we're going to get there, but the challenge is if you've got a board of 7 men and 1 woman and we say you need to be at a quota of 40%, what we often hear from people on that board is, are you saying my contribution, my value is not there? Are you saying I'm no good for this organisation? And we say, no, not at all. But for generations, no women have been allowed to be on this board or invited or permitted or seen to have merit. So how can you step back and make room? How do you get up off your seat and allow a person to take that seat on the bus or the train? That's the same analogy.
So the take-home message there is, if the person's not sure if we're talking equity, equality, but the great Australian concept of a fair go is fundamentally what we're trying to achieve.
Absolutely, and government has for a long time invested in organisations that need to provide support for those who don't have the same opportunities. I know how privileged I've been. I've graduated high school, gone to medical school, graduated with a tertiary degree that means I'm employable. That is the most extraordinarily privileged opportunity, and I recognise that. Education brings to us so much privilege. There are so many people who don't have that same opportunity. So government, that's our job, is to support those who do not have the same privileges as I have.
And Stella, how important is sport, as distinct from exercise and physical activity, to women's health?
It's incredibly important. I think exercise, physical activity and sport all produce great physical and mental health benefits, but sport gives you a common ground with other people. So yes, there are challenges in terms of equity, but sport shouldn't mind where you come from. It shouldn't mind that your political views are different, that your religious views are different. And when you see people actually join a team, they've suddenly found something that they have in common with others. So when they go to a community club, they get a sense of belonging, and I think that's the most important thing. I think particularly these days where social media is having such an impact on society and on young women in particular, that sense of community connection is quite easily lost. So I think for young girls and for women and for men as well, that sense of belonging to community is really, really important, and you get that through sport. You can turn up at a club, and we were discussing this before about sharing food from different cultures, people being able to ask questions that they wouldn't normally be able to ask about different cultural backgrounds. So it really is that sense of connection, and for young women, that social network is incredibly important. To have a network outside of school, home, education, it's absolutely critical. So sport's incredibly important.
And Bridie, as a former medical practitioner, how useful is the you can improve your health by playing sport message to getting Australian women playing sport?
We know that Australians broadly across all genders and backgrounds are underactive. We're not moving our bodies enough. We don't have enough incidental exercise, enough active transport, and we're certainly not engaging in enough sport and recreation as we should. But we also know that boys and men are 4 to 5 times more likely to be engaged in sport than girls and women. And to Stella's point, not only do we get a community benefit, but we know that women who compete in sport are much more likely to be leaders. And in fact, Ernst & Young did amazing research on global leadership and found that 96% of female CEOs globally have been competitive athletes in the past. So, and Kirby will be able to speak to this, but when we play sport, we fail, we lose, we're disappointed, we have to work with people we don't like or that we don't know, that speak a different language. So we have to develop all of these resilient skills that are actually life skills that teach us how to be in the workplace. And that's good for our mental health. It's absolutely good for our physical health. And we then are setting goals for ourselves. We're showing up every week, even when it's cold, even when it's damp. So all of the things that being engaged in the sporting community teach us make us better at school. We know that girls who play sport perform better academically. They manage their time better. That women who are active throughout pregnancy have healthier pregnancies and better deliveries. That ageing women and men have better musculoskeletal strength and less falls. So it is so beneficial. If 20 to 30 minutes of exercise every day was a pill, every doctor would be prescribing it.
Is there a risk that we can stereotype women's motivations in sport, that they're just playing it to be healthy, to help them lose weight? And my wife and I, we both play a lot of golf, and there's an assumption amongst a lot of male golfers, that women only play golf because of the social interaction. Yeah, are we at risk of stereotyping women unfairly with some of these motivations?
I think you might be unfairly stereotyping golfers there, which is why I don't play. But I think that what we know about women athletes is that they're equally ruthless, ambitious, aggressive, dedicated, desperate. And we also know that people play and can participate for all sorts of reasons. Some people want a break from work. Some people want to socialise. Most of the men I know that ride bikes do it because it gives them a break from their workplace and from their families, just to engage in a social way with men in a semi-competitive industry. And that's really healthy for them. They're kind of the new men's sheds, and I celebrate that. I think what we also need to be careful about is when we talk about the stats of women and girls' engagement in competitive sport relative to men, it's not because they don't want to. Are our clubs being inclusive and welcoming them? And we've seen before AFLW, there were a lot of girls and women that would say, I'm not the right colour for this sport, the right religion, I'm too fat, I'm not good at it. And we know from Vic Health research in the lead up to the This Girl Can campaign that women fear judgment, that they get yelled at in the street for being too fat to go running. Now when you tell a man he's too fat, he goes, yeah, I'm fat. When you tell a woman she's fat, she thinks that means I'm no good, I'm unattractive, I'm not worth anything in society. So a whole stream of values comes along with a completely random and discriminatory judgment that a complete stranger has made about you. So language matters.
Kirby, what got you involved in sport and what keeps you going?
I think it's part of my nationality. I'm a black fella. I grew up in Mount Barker, so Aboriginal. All the boys, all my cousins will play footy, so if if I wanted to kick, I had to go and earn my own footy. So that's kind of my starting point. Thought I was a boy as well, and my dream was to grow up and play AFL. Realistically, I couldn't, but I didn't understand it as a kid. So that's my starting point in the game. But as you do, I'm 32 years old. As you do grow up in a country town, AFL wasn't realistic, and the challenges behind that. We go through the draft, and the boys already have everything mapped out. So they've been given the opportunity to move away. They've got a host family. They come and they've got study if they need study. If they need a doctor, there's a doctor at the club to support them up. Whereas we get drafted in AFLW, and we have to then figure out, I'm from Perth, relocate, where am I going to live? Where's my furniture going to come from? What's my job? And then if I can't get a job, what's my backup plan for that? If footy goes for 4 months, what does that look like? So there's such a vast difference, and our expectation to perform at the elite level equivalent to what the AFL looks like is unrealistic. But because of the equity that hasn't been invested in us, we just can't get there at this moment. So I find that pretty challenging.
And you hinted at a few things in that response, but what's the greatest challenge to being an elite footballer who is also female and an Indigenous Australian?
Everything in that? No. So I think we'll talk about genetics. Things like sport has come naturally. It doesn't come naturally to all black fellas, but for me it has. So sport has always been my go-to, my safety, and that's all I've ever loved doing. So for me to be able to play at this level, I'm creating a platform that helps pave the way for the next generation. And I've got a big tribe, so a lot of my tribe is girls. My mum's has had 13 kids, 12 girls. So my responsibility to lead the way through action is so different. And it's so important for me. But as a female, being a little bit older as well, I have to think about what my future looks like. We get paid probably a max maybe $20,000 for our AFLW season. And so I've got to think about, I own a house, so, again, what's my job look like? Our training hours, I still have a full-time job, and I was getting home from club training at 11 at night, waking up ready for work again, and it's outrageous, but that's something that we have to do, and I think that's the biggest challenge. If we need to perform, that equity and that investment into us to be able to deliver those things has to shift.
And what do you recall being the biggest constraint to your participation in football?
I find that employers they genuinely want to support us on our journey being elite athletes, but realistically, so many here say, like, a work colleague would mention, well, I want to play golf on Sunday, and that's happened, but I don't get to play golf. But you can go and not work because you're playing footy. Like, it's just the mindset, and if they're having those conversations, it's not being addressed and it's not being educated, then we're going to have to deal with that for so much longer than we need to.
Bridie, I think it's fair to conclude that there's been significant improvement over the last 5 years, 10 years, 20 years when it comes to promoting women's sports participation. But what remains in terms of some of the more hidden or less obvious forms of discrimination that we need to work a little bit harder on?
So we actually haven't made any improvements in promoting women's sport. We still see less than 10% of the back pages devoted to women's sport reporting. Even when the WBBL season is on, even when the women's cricket team won the World Cup, it still took to day 4 of the World Cup for them to make the back page of the Herald Sun and the Age. And the standard at which we expect women internationally to perform is Sam Kerr's standard. So be basically the best player in the league in the world. She should be the best player in the world. Obviously, she got gypped there. She scores 3 goals. She does 2 backflips. That'll get you on the back page of the paper. We'll see then another 48 pages devoted to, how is Dusty Martin's knee. And so we need to start shifting that balance, and the only way to do that is to have a sense of unification around sub-editors, and newspaper owners, around government being an interested party. It's a very difficult organisation to regulate, of course. And printing newspapers is a dying trade. And so social media is incredibly valuable, and then we've seen the flip side of how damaging that can be, and Kirby's teammate Carlton, and the speculation and the horrible onslaught of feedback on Taylor Harris in that, using that photograph. So where we say things are better, and people say this to me all the time, things seem really good. You know, I saw a story once. There was a thing last night about women's sport. What we know about changing percentages, presentation of a person of colour in a room or a woman in a room. Stella and I have been in situations where we'll be at a very large industry lunch and there'll be 900 men and 50 women in the room, and the men will say, there's women here, look, there's one over there. So change is happening, and people in power see that change and say it's happening, and we say, yeah, cool, okay. And we talk about how far back some organisations are and we've come a long way. I agree with all of those things. But until we see equal reporting, until when there are still stories where they say, gee, I wonder who the best all-rounder in cricket is, and they list 7 men. Where's Elise Perry's name? Or I wonder, you know, could this be the greatest footballer of all time? 7 dudes. You know, even when they listed in the US about, you know, the GOAT, the greatest of all time, no Serena Williams in that list. So we still have to shift our mindset from thinking that the default is men. So that's why the AFLW, people who are following AFLW are using AFLM. So there's AFLM, AFLW, AFLX. Let's stop thinking that men is the gold standard, the men's cricket team, and then the Southern Stars. It's really hard. It's hard to be this annoying person that keeps bringing it up with people, but until we keep bringing it up and saying, hey, that language isn't that helpful. You know, I mean, recently there's extraordinary speculation and in the lead up to Castor Semenya's outcome, and which Kaz have said is discriminatory. They admit they're discriminating against her, and they're asking her to moderate her natural occurring testosterone in order to make it less uncomfortable. Basically, we don't like looking at you winning by so much. It's very uncomfortable for us as a message. And yet we acknowledge that Thorpe was born with a pretty great set of feet, and Leighton Hewitt's parents invested in him for 2 decades to be the best tennis player he could be. That's not fair. So there's a long way to go.
I know that you can envisage a time when men will not be the default position when it comes to sport. Are you prepared to put a year, a decade, or a century on when that might occur?
It's not a century.
It's still measured in decades?
I think it is. And I think some sports are really demonstrating great leadership on this. I'd like to say hockey is a really inclusive, equitable sport. And for a very long time I've been investing equally, not just financially, but about who should be the final game on Sunday afternoon, and they alternate it. They award their volunteers equally. Basketball's another really inclusive sport that way, and much more inclusive of people from very different backgrounds, religions, ages. So we need to celebrate some of the minnows, if you like. We're a bit AFL obsessed, no disrespect, but we are a bit AFL obsessed in this state, and we need to celebrate what sports are doing really good jobs. And also, as Stella's former career and working for Melbourne Victory Club, you know, the work that she and so many administrators are doing that's a little bit less visible, but it's actually about how do we connect professional club to the community. And more we're seeing professional sporting clubs saying, this is a young man that came down to our club who's unwell, or this is a person with intellectual disability who's a fan of this club. Because then the players suddenly realise what we do has an impact. People are fans of us, they love us, and how do we give back? And I think a lot of male and female footballers and professional athletes broadly are starting to understand the impact that they can have, positive and negative, and how they actually are role models. This is why they get paid millions of dollars. And we need to ask them to be better leaders, more accountable, and contribute broader to an inclusive society.
And on that note, Stella, and shifting gears or shifting the spotlight slowly, what's the role of men when it comes to improving women's sports participation?
The first thing I would say from my own experience is if you're going to call yourself a male champion of change, you better be one, because the rest of the women, alongside myself, will call you out on it. So it's really important that men actually recognise that women can contribute in different ways. They bring a different skill set, a different way of thinking. But their success isn't someone else's failure, and I think that was the point Bridie was making before. Men can actually really, I've had some great male role models, people who've been willing to help me, but not everybody has that. You know, it's often that men will forge ahead and think that they're the right person for the job, whereas women will hold back and say, look, there's one thing on that list of things that I actually can't do, so I'm not going for that job. That's not for me. Whereas men don't see it at all, they just forge ahead. So I think men hold the leadership positions in sporting clubs, in most sporting clubs in Australia, and they're the ones who can actually overcome the barriers. They can actually help women forge ahead. Now, Bridie made reference to my former career. I leave Melbourne Victory on Friday after 6.5 years, and I'm going to another industry where there is actually more opportunity for me. And I think for women coming through, it's been a real passion of mine to actually try and help our players, to try and help the younger women in our organisation actually forge ahead and say, no, I could actually do that job. And to go through with them why they're actually good at what they're doing, why these opportunities are just as much theirs as they are for the men. So men can really help. They can say, look, we won't stand in your way. We'll actually find a pathway for you. And I've had challenges along the way. I mean, I do question, and I think Bridie will attest on it. I'm fairly assertive in my own right. I did have a former CEO tell me that he would like to see me be more assertive with my male colleagues. And I thought this is an interesting feedback. I didn't get a lot of feedback from him, but that was probably one of the 3 things in about 4 years. That's a whole other story. But I think I went away then and took that feedback and thought, is this right? Is this something I actually need to do? And I was studying my master's at the time, so I did a personal communications unit, and with a focus on gender. And what really surprised me was, at first I wasn't surprised he was wrong, but I was surprised that women actually struggle with women as well. So there's this unconscious bias from men towards women. Assertiveness isn't, if you're overly assertive, you're actually seen as aggressive. So for women, there's this really fine line between being assertive enough and being too assertive. And I think we've actually got to help each other. The sisterhood needs to step up and say, well, we're going to give somebody else an opportunity, we're going to help them succeed, and we're going to encourage the men around us by educating them and saying, these have been our challenges, these are the barriers, and how do you help us fix them?
Maybe two phrases there that I want to pick up on. The sisterhood must step up, and early
Excuse me.
Oh, is she going to attack me?
No, I'm not taking I totally agree with you, but let's not put all this on the sisterhood.
Yeah, no.
The sisterhood are already stepping up. They're working real hard, okay? She's absolutely right. 96% of CEOs in sport across Australia are men. So sisterhood has stepped up as far as they can step. And we need to acknowledge that women, I think it's a myth, this whole women pulling the ladder up. I think what happens is women have worked their asses off to get spots. They're just treading the water there, and then someone says, hi, could you help me with my career? And you think, sure, love, but I'm also actually just trying to hang here as the one woman on the board or the one woman exec, and I don't need my whole agenda to be gender. I also want to work in operations, or I'm trying to be the CEO too. So it's not actually a zero-sum game. We all need to remember that sport. We think of sport as being binary, there's a winner and a loser, but actually in life it is not that way. There are all sorts of people in this grey area that are supporting, but also thinking about themselves, who have personal life crises that can't, this is why they're not. So I totally agree with Stella, I don't want you to focus on the system.
No, and neither do I. Neither do I, and I probably, I should give that a little more context. When I say it needs to step up to educate the men that they work with. They need to not be afraid to say, this is a problem, or this is a barrier, or here's my suggestion on how we might fix this problem. And that's what I mean by the sisterhood stepping up. And also not being afraid to give stuff a go. And I don't want to focus on the sisterhood, and I thought Bridie was coming from me then, so it's really interesting.
I'm not coming for it.
But I think we can do more in the sense that we can say, no, hang on a minute, that's not okay. There's an opportunity here for me, and I'm just as entitled to this opportunity as my male colleague. And I've been through that process. I've experienced that at Melbourne Victory, and I've been fortunate enough to have men in there who said to me, yeah, actually you're right, that is something you can do. So when I say sisterhood, I mean in that sense. We've actually got to, we all need to help each other, but we need to educate and inform the men around us of what our lived experiences are. I had no idea when I came into Melbourne Victory that the girls in our team, most of them had come through with changing in the car park. Not for Victory, but for games. They've actually had to change in the car park. I've got 2 kids, a boy and a girl. Anyone in here who's a parent, would you send your children outside to get changed? No, but it was okay in the sporting field. So it's those things that the state government, Bridie particularly, has led the way on actually changing and saying, no, the girls need the change rooms. And as recently as this morning, I spoke to one of our former WA players who's on my staff, and I said, what are you finding in the community clubs now for women and girls? And she said, it's getting better. You know, we've got change rooms now where the showers have doors, and we can actually get some time out on the main pitch, which they never could before. So we are seeing change. It's not enough. It's not happening fast enough. And those things that men just take for granted, women are fighting for it every day. So when I talk about the sisterhood, don't misunderstand me. Because the sister, when I say it needs to step up, it needs to say we need those things.
Let me provide you the scenario though, whereby at a club annual general meeting, a gender equity clause was proposed to be in the Constitution, and that was voted against equally by women and men.
So that's an end of one, Geoff.
Yeah.
As a scientist, that's one example, an anecdote.
Yes.
That's actually not happening though across Australia.
No, and I think we're seeing change where we have a couple of directors who are very focused on helping girls achieve more. They've really stepped up behind our W League team. And people see women's professional sport and think they must have all of these things, you know. They must have what the men have. It doesn't work that way. They're coming into change rooms that often aren't theirs. They're coming into substandard resources sometimes. So we're seeing those changes. We're having an academy built out in the western suburbs, and that will be the home of our W League team. And it will be the first time that our W League players have access to better sports science facilities than the men. Now those changes are really important. They've been backed by and driven by one of our directors who is a male, not the female director, the male one. So I think, again, we've got to step up and say, no, that's not right. And often lobbying goes on before AGMs, as you know. So it is that. You've actually got to get your message out well in advance and say, this is where we need your help to fix this issue. And I think often if people are asked for help, they're happy to give help. They just don't understand sometimes that they need to do it.
Kirby, are there many conversations amongst your AFL playing colleagues about sort of their life after AFL and how they might leverage their sports participation for better, greater or different employment outcomes?
Not really, because realistically we're still part-time as well, so our goals in regards to work and our biggest driver is what we're currently living. I think that conversation will be when I'm in a gopher somewhere, driving around. When I'm a little bit older. So for me, I do plan what my future looks like, as I said, but to still be a part of this game at my age, everything that I do impacts and influences young girls. Not only young girls, but Aboriginal young girls. And for me, that's invaluable. So whether it's saying hello in a respectful way or, helping somebody across the road, those small things make a significant difference for the way that our young girls then react or take ownership for. But we're still living, just on that point as well, as recent as this year, we have to work around our boys. And it's our season, AFLW season, and VFL decide they want to train on the main field. We still have to adjust and do those things. So how do we have those respectful, honest conversations to shift that thinking and to actually acknowledge that we are, yes, trying to build this club together. This is what it looks like and this is what we need. So,
do you have any aspirations to work in the sports industry after your playing career?
I don't think in the sports industry. I think if I want to stay in the game, it's to help create that opportunity for the young girls. So and Aboriginal young girls with different challenges that other kids might have. Obviously, it's through my own experience, so being exposed to domestic violence and how do we educate to understand that that's not okay. Drugs and alcohol, how can we empower our girls to move forward and to make smart decisions that help them thrive. That's not only for, I guess, Aboriginal girls, but for all girls in every aspect of life.
Just sort of in closing, sort of phase A of the conversation today, I want to invite each and every one of you to talk about one thing that either is working really well or one thing that is just not working when it comes to this conversation about women in sport. Free range, one thing that is working or just one thing that is not working.
I think one thing that's not working as fast as I'd like it to is the process to get into leadership roles for women. And I know we've got quotas and that will help enormously, but I think those opportunities just aren't there for women in the way they should be. And anybody working in sport, particularly the men who lead, need to recognise that they need to create those pathways, or they lose the IP that women who have come through organisations have actually developed over time. It goes from their organisation and it goes from sport.
One thing that is really working is the fact that we all live in Victoria, and we are very fortunate to have a Premier, a Cabinet and an entire government that sees gender equality as a priority. We have Safe and Strong, which is a policy around prevention of violence against women, thanks to the late Minister Fiona Richardson. We have a 50-50 Cabinet, so there's a visible representation in this state that there are highly skilled, talented women politicians to speak on all manner of things. And we have an Office for Women in Sport and Recreation. I'm privileged to have this job. As difficult as it is, it's brilliant and exciting. And I think when I feel frustrated by the challenges we have, and then I get an email or a call from someone in WA or New Zealand or Queensland or New South Wales, and we say, oh, do you have a female-friendly facilities fund? No. Do you have a policy around this? No. Do you have any board quota issues? No. What's your scholarship funding? What are the things that you're doing around supporting workforces? And I just think far out we're really leading. And that is an absolute privilege, and we need to run with that.
Does that start with government?
I think I can't speak to how that process unfolded. I do know that Minister Richardson, former Sport Minister, Minister Erin, all aspects of government felt that this was necessary. The inquiry that was led by Peggy O'Neill, who is, of course, an interloper to our country, comes over from America, wins a premiership for the Tigers, first ever woman to be a president. So there's another really great, strong visual representation, not just of a woman leader, but she says she feels like an outsider all the time in AFL meetings. She's small, she has an American accent, and people think, what do you know about running a club? And yet that club, and with that great CEO, and I'm not a Tigers fan, but there is a lot of great clubs doing a lot of great things, but Richmond, I think, is a club to be celebrated. And that's important and a powerful message. We have Vic Health down here. We've just seen the departed CEO, Gerald Rector, move into sport. She's now the CEO of Basketball Australia. She was an extraordinary leader for Vic Health, and no other state has a statutory authority around investing in preventing obesity, getting people moving, decreasing smoking and alcohol. So we can do better in Victoria at aligning and communicating better and collaborating, but I think that's something that's working very well for us, and we should be very grateful.
Kirby, what's one thing that's working or one thing that's not working?
Probably more leaning on the not working side. I think if you want different, you invite different. Sometimes we're sitting at the table, the same people with the same views and the same textbook, and we're reading the same words. So unless you're willing to step outside of your comfort zone and invite new people to the table with different experiences, with different backgrounds and understandings, then you're going to end up with the same result. So in regards to speaking specific to AFLW, but not once a player's invited to the table and have the discussions about what it looked like, what has worked, what they've found their talent, like none of those conversations. I think that we need to get to that point that we're more accepting of being challenged ourselves. When we think we know, we more often don't.